Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. I don't know if you can see me on the screen or not. We're trying to figure this all out, but my name's Wendy Williams, and I am pleased to call myself a friend of Hannah Studley, and I'm assisting her today in this book launch. So why don't we all give Hannah a round of applause? Yay! Yeah, this is pretty amazing. So if any of you have the book in your possession, you know that this is a textbook. This is so highly cited. It is amazingly in depth. It is weighty in terms of content and in terms of size, holding it on your lap. I mean, this is a resource to end all resources. So, this is just an amazing accomplishment. And those of us who are in this conversation for any length of time, a debt of gratitude to you, Hannah. Truly, truly, truly. Many, many thanks for doing this. This is just beyond the beyond. So thank you so much for doing this.
And by the way,
Yeah.
Wendy's just stepped in at the last minute because Joe couldn't make it. So Wendy was just going to be doing the door for me, and here she is doing a fabulous job. Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Glad to do it. Glad to do it. Um, so I do have this really, we talked about it a little bit, but really, what did inspire or what was the kickoff for you to say, this is a resource that needs to be out in the world? What about Beyond Diagnosis inspired you to take this on? I mean, this is huge.
Um, Thank you. I just got a message from Joe that he thinks it's tomorrow. So forgive me for 1 second while I just get on. Um, uh,
Sure.
I'm just reply to him. It's
Yep.
now. So he's there. So he may still join us. Um, there we go. So yeah, great question. So it was about 2 or 3 years ago when I was sitting on my sofa and I just had this idea that what if I collected all the stories of people who've recovered? Like, there are so many people in our community who've recovered from some kind of mental health diagnosis. Some, some of our clients, some of our colleagues. And what if we could get them all together in one place as a resource? Like, how inspiring that would be. Because I'm sure you guys have had the same experience. You try and explain this to somebody, and they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's not going to work for me. Or what if, no, my situation's different. And you can say, well, look on page 25, look on page 152. There's someone who's had your experience and they got well. So that was my idea, was to, collect all the stories together and have them in one place, and for it to be an ongoing resource. Because as I was telling you, I've built a website to go through with this, so that we can carry on, adding the stories, so it'll be a resource for everybody to use, for as long as we need. Yeah, it was just like, and I thought, oh my gosh, like, wouldn't that be a great idea? And then came a lot of work.
Then came, yeah. So you said that was 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, yeah.
So it was like a intra-pandemic inspiration?
Maybe, yeah. Maybe I was just sitting there like, like, okay, we got through that. Now what?
Yeah. Right, 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 right. Was it challenging actually having people the stories, collecting the stories? Was it challenging in any way or
Well, I put out a call, I put out in a few, 3 Principles Facebook groups, and to my friends and colleagues and clients, and I just said, do you have a story? Do you have something you want to share? And it was overwhelming. And what's really touched me is people's willingness um, to to be vulnerable, to be open, to share this. Because, and I know things are different these days than when we were younger, and people want to, share and are more happy to than years in the past. But it was so touching, and all the people here, like, there are several people on the call now who shared their stories with me. I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, because your willingness to like be vulnerable, to be open is unbelievable and so appreciated. You know, and I know the people who've already you know, read the books are very, very touched and really benefiting from that honesty. So I really appreciate that. So
Yeah,
Wendy, I see that Joe is now here.
I do.
Well, Hannah and everybody, welcome. And I'm so honored that you asked me to host this, Hannah. And I am so proud of you for what you've done here and grateful to you for what you've done for the field of psychology, for the three principles, to lay out the story of what has happened in the last 40 some years with our field. And,
Mhm.
you know, I got into this profession because I wanted to help alleviate the suffering in the world. And as a psychologist, I was just taught about diagnosing people. That was our job. Psychiatrists like Bill Pettit did the work. You know, we refer to them after we diagnosed them. So I just learned about testing and diagnosing and Rorschachs and MMPIs and all of that. But we didn't get much training in actually helping people. We didn't really know how. And so I just started learning techniques, and the results were very inconsistent. Uh, People never really achieved mental health. At the best, they had some symptom reduction. But when I met Sid, I realized when I met him that this was truly a paradigm shift for the field of psychology. That this was not about mental illness, this was about mental health, reawakening the mental health in people by a simple understanding, a profound understanding of the principles behind our moment to moment experience. And so for me as a professional therapist, immediately alleviated my suffering, my burnout, my stress from doing what I thought was a really hard job. You know, really in the trenches of working with addiction and serious mental illness. And when I heard the simplicity from Sid of the principles and pointing to me the most important fact is that this mental health, this resilience, this essence of who we are can never be destroyed. That my job was really to bring that life, help facilitate bringing that life back rather than putting something into someone like a drug or a technique. And so seeing my clients as already well and meant the seat of mental health made my job a whole lot easier. And the results speak for themselves. So thank you, thank you, thank you for documenting this in such it's an academic book. I think it could be used in graduate programs. Uh, it will go all over the world because this is what the world needs now. This is the help and the hope that we now need in this world, not just for mental health and addictions, but beyond that, for the division in our societies and in our planet. We face so many issues, and they all come back to a deeper understanding of mind. Because when you haven't got a deep understanding of mind, you can't think clearly. You don't have insight. You don't have those transformations. So, again, thank you so much for this. Was a labor of love, and you put a lot of work into this. And so, again, I apologize for getting the time mixed up. I was so sure I had it right.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. It really, you're right. It really was a labor of love because you know, as you know, I've written a few other books and like yourself, and when you're writing just on your own, you know, you've just got yourself to deal with and maybe the editor, you know. But I counted at one point, I had maybe like 70 contributors and dealing with the editing and gathering and the feedback and the approvals, and you know, it was quite a lot of work. But it didn't really feel like work because um because it was coming from that place of I really want to get this message out, you know. So I think when you've got a desire like that to really push something, it's in fact we've, you know, it's, what's that quote? I think it's from, is it Mark Twain or Oscar Wilde, one of those guys. It's like, you know, if you do something you love, it's not really work. You know, it's and that's how I've been blessed that I've had a few jobs like that now where I love it so much that it doesn't feel like work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a privilege, really,
Hmm.
every day, you know, whether you're writing or you're counseling or you're teaching, when you talk from mind, when you talk from universal mind, there's no work to it. There's no effort. It just flows out of you without any thinking on our part. And that's what we're really guiding people, is how to live their life by inspiration and insight versus habit and fear and anxiety. So I I just again, I'm just so grateful that you wrote this book.
Yeah, thank you. Bill, did you want to share something?
I don't, please go ahead, Joe. I don't want to interrupt your flow at all. I was just going to comment on something that Hannah said earlier, but yeah, so
Go
please
ahead,
can.
it's fine.
Oh, Joe, okay. Well, you know, I think what you hit upon, Hannah, you know, and like Joe said, many presentations of one problem, but at the same time, what they're finding in neuroscience is that the same areas, many of the same areas are being triggered in the state of chronic mental stress. And what's different is two things. Hereditarily, for some people, and Dicken and I have talked about this, you know, for that, what's hereditary is what is your alarm system that's loudest. So for Dicken, I think has shared so openly that his was anxiety. Mine was depression. Mine was mood. I went into depressions. For other people, it's thought. Their thoughts start getting muddled or confused, or you know, and many people, before they're even aware that they're anxious or low mood or thinking problems, they have some physical. They get a migraine, or they get their bowel system gets real. Or for some people, they suddenly, you know, they're showing now that the connection between the brain and the gut, that chronic mental stress affects the microbiota with a feedback from the bowel to your brain, that your pain tolerance can be reduced by up to 70%. So people with fibromyalgia are truly experiencing significant pain, but they don't see it as an alarm system that's summoning them to stillness, you know, to listen and like Joe says, to listen to mind. They see it as one more problem. Gee, here I am worried about my grandson, and now I've got a frickin' headache, or I've got this or that, and so it gets into a vicious cycle. But I think what I started to say is that they're seeing that they many of the same areas, and then the other thing that is both hereditary and social is, how do you respond to the dis-ease that Joe talked about? How do you respond to that? Do you respond by eating too much? Do you respond by, you know, doing this, doing that? And so behaviorally, your state of being that you're creating by the use of these principles, people respond to that state of being in different ways to try to get relief, to try to feel better, at least for a little while. And anyway, so, you know, I think you were onto something. That's why Caspi and Moffat, when they wrote that article that was in the American Journal of Psychiatry in September of 2018, all for one, one for all, you know, all mental illness in one dimension. You know, I just got so excited because Sid, as Joe said, Sid been saying that 30 years. I'd been saying it for 20. Joe and I had been saying it for 25 or so, or 30. And to finally hear this with Terry Moffat from King's College, to have 137 scientific references saying that all the research is pointing to that there's one cause, you know, of all mental illness. And they had 4 different hypotheses, but I called Tom Kelly the next morning and said, Tom, this is the article we've been waiting for. We've got to respond to this. And although it took us 22 months, you know, to do that with Jack and Tom and Judy and I, but I mean, I think you've taken it to a whole different level, and Hannah, and as I said in my review, I don't know if it's been approved yet or whether it will be, but I said this book demands national and international dialogue and research.
Yeah.
It demands it. You know, so you've really pushed it to a whole new level. And I finally have started dictating. I've dictated 2.5 hours, you know, that's being transcribed. And you've been an inspiration to me to finally have enough clarity to ride on to leapfrog on your wonderful accomplishment. So I echo thanking you too for, yeah.
Well,
Anyway, stop jabbering.
thank you, Bill. I really appreciate all your support and your teaching, and your friendship has been invaluable. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah.
It's mutual.
Can I comment, Hannah, one more thing that Bill was talking, it triggered, is the innocence of all people in all of this. You know, as a psychologist, you as a psychiatrist, or social workers, we're all different professions and lay people here. But what Sid pointed to was innocence, you know, the absolute innocence of this big misunderstanding that our experience was coming from out there, our genetics, other people, circumstances, our past, the future that's not yet completed. When we see that it's all about thought, it makes our job so easy, number one, but it stops the transfer of addictions and the transfer from one issue to another issue. As a therapist, before I learned the principles, I had a great successful practice, made a lot of money because my clients would keep repeating. They'd get over one issue and then they'd come back with another issue. And so it was a good income, but I didn't really help anyone. You know, I wasn't addressing the root, which was a misunderstanding innocently of how we create our experience from the inside through the power of mind, thought, and consciousness. And the other thing is that we have this universal mind that we are all connected to, that we are. And that is the source of all transformation, all insight, all change. And you point people to mind. You know, it's kind of hard to talk about because it's spiritual. It's an essence. But when you point people back to that, like when I'm writing a book, I don't feel like I'm writing. It feels like it's coming through me. When I'm giving a talk, it doesn't feel like I have to prepare a lot. I just have to trust that my wisdom will connect with the audience in that moment or with that client. So it takes all the stress out for therapists, but also for, you know, like I've worked at Mayo Clinic with the physicians there, teaching them these principles, because it helped them be better physicians because they showed up in a good mood more often and better listeners, and they didn't lose their compassion and their caring, which is the heart of healing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, such great examples of where this understanding can go. Like there's no limit, right? It's phenomenal. I know it's changed so many lives, and you know, God willing, it's going to change a lot more.
As Sid said before he died, the cat's out of the bag. Put it back in.
right, right.
Dicken's got his hand up.
Yeah. Hi, Dicken.
Hello, hello. Hannah, what a joy to get your book. Really.
Yeah.
You have to understand, 45 years ago, there was a diagnostic manual that pretty much was trying to label all the different ways people could act when they're caught up in thought and not knowing it. And over the years, it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was really, the thicker it got, the more hopeless and discouraging it seemed for people who ended up being labeled with an incurable illness that they would have to learn how to cope with. So I loved how you organized your book. I love the introductory chapter to a category, and then examples of variations. And to me, your book is groundbreaking because it's the exact opposite of the diagnostic manual. Here's everything that's wrong with you, and you're saying no matter how you end up experiencing life, there's hope. And it's like the biggest book of hope that's out there right now for people who find themselves struggling. So like Bill mentioned and Joe have mentioned, I just hope this circulates everywhere in the world, because it's going to help that dialogue get going that's so necessary, or to continue, that there are cures to any problem, and that those cures will lead to creating a healthy society. And if we create a healthy society, like Joe said, we're going to figure out any of the big social problems. People tapping into that universal mind wisdom are going to be able to find solutions. There's people all over the world doing that now, but if that accelerates, it's going to be life-changing. So I'm just going to leave that book out on my table, so anybody who walks into my house is going to see what's beyond diagnosis. I say, oh, you're in for a treat. You're in for a treat. So it was a daunting task. When you first told me about it, I said, oh my God, that is such a huge task. Are you sure you're up for it? You were up for it in spades. You were the perfect person to take that project on. And I can't tell you what a stellar job I think you did with it. So thank you, Hannah. Yeah.
Thank you, and I appreciate all your support and your the contribution in the book, and your friendship and your mentorship is, you know, unbelievable. Yeah,
You're such a joy to work with, because you are like what they call the ideal student. It's like you're not only a sponge, but you're just so open that you just keep having insight after insight after insight. So kudos to you, my friend.
Thank you.
I wanted to come on and say a few things in the beginning. I have two young grandkids who are begging for my attention,
Yes.
4 and 7. So I just could pop on for a little bit, but I didn't want to miss this party and say hi to everybody.
All right. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Got your priorities straight there, Dicken.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes. Yeah.
So, Hannah, what was it like for you to interview all these people? What was that like to hear directly all these stories of hope?
Yeah, it was in a way it was kind of overwhelming, you know, like when, like, the good thing about it was that listening to people's darkness and their difficulties and the pain they went through, for me it was like I knew I could read that because I knew there was going to be a happy ending, right? Because that's why they were sending it in. You know, I'd ask for stories of hope, So, because sometimes when you tell people about, things that have happened to yourself or the work that we do, people go, "Oh my gosh, that's terrible. How could you, spend all day listening to those problems?" I'm like, no, but like as you were saying, everybody has health, and all these stories show how even no matter what people have gone through, that there's this they come through it and out the other side, and this kind of transformational experience. And as I was collecting the stories, I noticed some common themes through a lot of the stories. And there was a lot of them were kind of followed on the same path of, the suffering and the misunderstanding. And then the trying lots of different techniques, different therapies, they're going to different psychologists, they're doing lots of traditional stuff, and then trying alternative things. They're doing EMDR, and they're tapping, and they're doing ice baths, and they're like just the desperation. And then most people like heard something. They heard a teacher like yourself and Dicken and Bill, and then something clicks for them, and they realize it's much simpler than they thought it was. It's simpler than what they've been told. And one of my favorite stories of that is Judy, I think you said Nachis, I think is how you say her name. She's from New Zealand, and she's in the section about suicidal ideation. And she tells this great story in the book about how I think she was gardening, or she was out, out taking care of her horses, I think. And she'd been planning a suicide, and she'd been Googling it, and she really didn't want to be here anymore. She'd been suffering so much. And in her way of coping at the time was go out in the garden and stick her headphones on and just put some kind of, something from YouTube on just to distract herself. And she's doing this, and on came Michael Neal, a Michael Neal video, and he's talking about the principles. And she said she hated it. She said she was convinced he was selling something, but because her hands were muddy, she couldn't switch it off. Right? So she had to listen to Michael with her muddy hands before she could get back in the house. And she heard something. She heard her spirit, her soul heard something. And all that, the thinking that she had of planning on ending it just started to fall away. And obviously it's a journey, and there's more to it than that. But that was something I noticed in a lot of the stories, that there's this moment of like clarity, a moment of clarity when people start to see that it's probably not what they thought it was. And there's a hope that it can be different. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to collect the stories, so that people who are suffering or are in the darkness right now can see that, that this could happen for them also. So yeah, that was a great experience. Yeah.
Yep. The other thing that I heard in reading your story, so many of the stories, I couldn't put the book down. I was at my cabin writing another book about the same thing. But I just couldn't put them down, because as soon as people have that moment of clarity, that moment where they tap into who they are, this universal mind, the first thing that comes is relief.
Yeah.
There's an unburdening of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, it's like the sun comes out because the clouds have passed. So you feel hope. And this hope it's almost a chemical thing, in that it clears the mind and makes way for transformational insight. So as a therapist, as a psychologist, knowing that that's in everybody, that when I see a client, regardless of diagnosis, regardless of how long their history has been in that thinking, I just see that spark in there. And I work that spark. I encourage that spark. I give hope to that spark. And when you know that as a helper, it like all of us, Bill and a lot of us, I'm 76 and I'm still working, and you don't ever want to quit, because it's such a joy and a privilege to be there for the birth. It's like it's almost like you're a birth what do you call it? The birther, the
Yeah, the midwife.
you're like a midwife. You're like a
Right.
midwife for the mind, and helping people and then encouraging that by saying, that's what you're looking for. These answers are in you, not me, but in you. And you can trust that. That it makes therapy shorter term because it gets results. But I remember when I first started working this way, I had a really large practice, but my clients started getting well and they'd drop out. And pretty soon my income went way down. I thought, oh,
Right.
this is not an economic model. But then they started telling all their friends and family. And pretty soon, Chris and I, we had so many clients, we had to start an institute, a mental health center, and train other therapists because the word just got out. There was hope. There was a cure. There was a way out of this. It wasn't going to be a lifelong sentence to being in therapy the rest of your life. So, and that's true on a physical level too, with physical disease, that when people have this realization that they're not their diagnosis, it makes room for healing on a physical level. And I have a whole story in the book about Lyme disease that you can certainly, the readers can look at. But seeing that as thought, that was a big blind spot for me. And that was a transformation almost instantaneously from that chronic illness. And you've had that experience too, Hannah, with pain, right?
Yeah. Like I had 25 years of chronic pain, mostly back pain. I'd had sciatica. I'd been paralyzed multiple times. I mean, thank God it was always temporary, but you don't know that at the time, which is really frightening. And so I carried around a story for a long time that my spine is weak and it's going to crumble at any moment, and that could just be it. And I'll spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair or, in bed or, needing surgeries. And, just like a year into understanding, coming across the principles, and my pain just went away. And I've worked with a lot of people with pain now, and they often say to me, what did you do to make your pain go away? And I'd say, nothing, right? Because I didn't know my pain could go away. So it wasn't like I'd go and found the 3 principles to, to work on my physical issues. I was fascinated by Sid and his work and these ideas. And then my pain went away. And I see now it's because as my thinking slowed down, my body didn't need to scream at me anymore. Kind of like what Bill was saying earlier. It's like, and for me, it was a physical thing. My body was screaming at me to slow down. And I went through a few years after that of just beginning to realize just how anxious I was. I didn't even know I was anxious. I thought overthinking all my problems was the right thing to do, right? Because been a bit of a perfectionist, I guess now I see it. But I see all the physical stuff were signals trying to get my attention. And that's what I think most of the stories in the book are showing. Like for me, it was physical. For other people, it's, like relationships start crumbling. And other people, it's, financial problems. And then they've got obsessive rituals, or they've got the intrusive thoughts, and the only way to deal with that is to overeat or not eat. Or some people are cutting, some people are even going off into alternate realities. And this is what I learned from Bill about how this is a way for people to cope until hopefully they get help. And that's the wisdom, the wisdom of mind is coming into, and this is an insight I got in writing my book on pain, is that if we are designed, as it were, by divine mind to have such wisdom in our bodies, to, like everybody has this ability in their body to heal infections, to heal a fracture. Why wouldn't our minds have the same healing system? Right? Well, it does, and that's what, I learned from all you guys, like what Sid taught us is that if we wait for a few minutes, that thinking's going to pass, those feelings are going to pass. We don't have to be scared by it. And then we come back to the moment. That's its healing system. Only like Jack wrote in his called his book, why didn't somebody tell us? Right? We didn't know until we knew. I think, and when, that's what the stories in the book and all the, the clinical interviews are showing, that when you understand how something works, like you were saying, then we come back to the moment where we're safe and we're okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's your favorite story in the book, Hannah? I know that's a tough question.
I do have a couple of favorites, but I don't want to say a particular one, because they're all, like at the beginning, I was thanking everybody for their generosity and their kindness to, their vulnerability to share their stories. So I don't want to pick out one individual. I mean, some of the stories are from people, like there's a lot of names in there that people recognize, and there's also people that are new to the, you read all the stories, because some of the, like, they're absolutely fascinating. Obviously, I've got a few favorites because of some of my clients' stories are in the books too. But I just wanted to tell you a funny story about one of them. Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with Rob Cook, right? So Rob was wonderful in volunteering his PTSD story. And Rob's a busy guy, and it took me a while to pin him down to do an interview, because he wanted to tell me his story on a Zoom. And, it took a couple of months for us both to be able to get together to do the story. And when we finally managed to hook up, and we're both on Zoom, and then there was some problem with the internet, so he got kicked out and then I got kicked out, and finally we got it all sorted, and he told me his story. And it was, you can read it in the book. It's an amazing story of him being in the military and going to Afghanistan and having PTSD. He was actually in Obama's security detail, and and then the suffering he went through with his PTSD after, and his amazing transformation, and now he's doing amazing work with other people. And I was like, oh, thank you so much, that's amazing. We said goodbye, and I hadn't pressed record. I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? So this was amazing for me. I opened up a Word document and I started typing, and I typed Rob Cook's story, and 800 words came out. And I'm sure I got some of the military stuff wrong, and I thought, well, he'll edit it himself anyway. And what I got out of that was, we often talk about listening, deep listening, as a way of helping people and working with clients. And I realized I had absolutely nothing on my mind while he was talking, because I thought it was being recorded, and secondly, it wasn't a coaching situation, so I wasn't, involved in the conversation. I just was listening, and with my mind so quiet and clear and captivated by his story. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't know what happened this morning or yesterday, I couldn't tell you, but suddenly I could type out 800 words of somebody else's story. It was such an experience. And when I emailed him the next day with the version that I had, I said, I am so sorry, I forgot to press record. Of course, he's such a nice guy. He said, don't worry about it. And he read it through, and he corrected a few of the military terms and added a few things. And it turns out to be an okay story. But that was a really powerful experience for me, because I really saw the difference of, having a quiet mind, having a busy mind, and how far I've come, and the potential of everybody when we're in the moment. Because I can remember a few years ago, like especially when I was going through menopause, and I thought I was losing my mind. I can remember coaching people and starting sentences, and I didn't even know how the sentence was going to finish. I couldn't remember anything. And now it was such wonderful proof that when we're quiet, when we're trusting, when we're in the moment, our minds are clear. It's amazing what we're capable of. So I just wanted to share that funny story, because it was a good one. Yeah.
I think it's important for people to know, who are listening to this, and to that just because you understand or begin to get an understanding of the principles and the source of your mental health is within and all that life is a contact sport, as Sid often said. Will still, and I have many times in the last 40 some years since I met Sydney, gotten caught up in one issue or illness or challenge in my life after another. But every time that I was challenged, knowing the principles, eventually, sometimes quickly, sometimes took longer, with more encouragement from colleagues, to go within and really listen and find that that was actually a gift that you got, to give you more compassion for people going through that, or to get a deeper knowing that the answers always are within, that there is no challenge that you can face in life, including death or severe illness, that doesn't have an acceptance or a solution or an insight that will alleviate your suffering. It's not going to alleviate your pain necessarily or your circumstances, but it's going to alleviate your suffering. And suffering is the opposite of mental health.
Right. Right.
And so it's a remarkable book of hope, that no matter what people's problems are, you've covered there's more problems that are in, but you've covered a whole lot of them as a clinical psychologist. You can attest to that, to show that this applies to everything and everybody. There are no exceptions, as Bill often talks about. There are no, God didn't make any bad product here. There's, we are perfectly designed.
Yeah, it's amazing. Joe, I was wondering if maybe we should open it up and see if anybody has any questions, or there's a few other contributors here. I don't know if they want to say anything. Let's see if
That sounds
anybody.
like a great idea.
Yeah. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Anna. Nice to be here. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a really amazing achievement, and I've got mine here. I haven't started reading it yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. So, my question was really around when I kind of share this kind of message, some people are so relieved, especially if they've had a diagnosis a long time and they're not, they haven't seen any improvement, and this is so much more hopeful. But some people are really defensive, and they kind of see it almost like an accusation, like, so you're saying it's my fault, like, or that sort of thing. So I'm really glad to have the book with all the examples. I think it's going to be really helpful, but there has to be like a willingness to even open a book, or to look at it. So yeah, I just wonder if you have, I feel like culturally it's become the norm now, to kind of really, it's almost a sign of compassion, misguided, I think, but to say, oh, I'm so sorry, I have all these diagnoses, and that means, things are so difficult. And it's a real, like, it's difficult for people to kind of wake up from that, and without being seen as like not being understanding or something. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I'd love if you could maybe speak to that.
So you're asking like how to encourage people to be open to these ideas?
Not really. I mean, it's more, yeah, I mean, I guess the way I see it, there's openness or there isn't. But
I mean, I used to just encourage people to get curious.
Yeah.
Or either the person themselves, or often it's like a family member, or like I met a woman the other day, and she's saying, oh, my daughter's got bulimia, and and she's doing all these treatments, and she said, oh, I'm going to tell her to read your book. And I said, don't do that. Like, if you tell her to read it, then it's just going to be another thing, another thing for her to, I don't know, just throw away as another idea. So I said, why don't you just say, wow, I met this woman and she's just written a book, and it was, you know, it's on Amazon, and it was so interesting, and just, you know, trying to like spark some curiosity. And just, you know, because I think people, it's a little bit more sneaky, but then people are a bit more open to, you know, like if you get them curious about something, and they see that you've had an amazing, you know, transformation. So when they get curious, like, well, how did you do that? You know, how did that happen for you? And, you know, that's what I often get asked, is like, yeah, but how? You know, and as we know that there isn't anything to do, so that's a question that's kind of, but you can kind of use that, get their curiosity going. I find that's probably a good way to get people to be a little bit more open anyway. But yeah, so I don't know if, does that help?
I would.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe.
And you're an advertisement in a sense for what's possible. You know, so the way you show up, as if you're a coach or a therapist or a mom or whatever your role is, you're being a living example of mental health, and being comfortable in your own skin is going to make people curious when they're open. And so that's part of it. But the other part is that when you see that person, you see beyond their symptoms, you see beyond how they present to that health in them, and they feel that. My clients often say, you saw something in me that I never saw in myself. And you didn't even say it, but I could feel it, that you saw that. And that feeling of knowing that everybody has this innate health is very, very powerful. So it's really the health of the helper is the key to the whole therapy process here. Is the more we're walking the talk, more we selfishly get this for ourselves, the more we pass it on without trying to convince anyone. It's just emanates from our being. So that's the most powerful thing that you have going for you, is you. You don't have to convince anyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. I see Tom has his hand up. Tom, I want to thank Tom because he was one of the first people to send me his story. You know, at the beginning when I was like, oh gosh, is anybody gonna, you know, show up for this? And Tom was one of the first people to send his story in. So Tom, I want to say thank you, because you kind of gave me the confidence to keep going. So hi.
Wow. Well, hi. That's so great. I just really wanted to take the opportunity to say hi and congratulations. And, you know, I'm about a third of the way through the book. And Hannah, there's something about the accumulation of story after story after story is so powerful. And, you know, I reflect back on my time of like suffering and first exploring the principles, and in the beginning, not feeling like I was getting anywhere. But now I went back and realized all the stories I heard, and the teachers, you know, like Bill and Joe and Dick and other people on this call, they would always incorporate these case studies and stories into their webinars and talks. And I realized that, like, when people hear about the principles, they can either say a whole range of things. They can say, oh yeah, that sounds great. Or, as you know, they can argue with it. But it's hard to argue with someone's story.
Yeah.
And to me, what a story does, it opens up hope and curiosity. And as soon as hope and curiosity are open, the door is open. You know, and that's what your book's doing. And you know, I just envision like people all around the world picking this up and just opening up to a story and seeing something, because it's so powerful. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. You've just reminded me, I see Cecilia's on the call. Hi, Cecilia. You know, it's so nice to see the other contributors here. Cecilia, at the end of your story, you said the most powerful thing. It really struck me. I was looking at it this morning. You said, when I found out I wasn't broken, then why do we need treatment? Right? You say that at the end of your story, and I thought, that's so right. It's like, because a lot of the treatments that you know we're given are like we were talking about earlier, chemical imbalances, and you know, there's something wrong with you. Well, if there's nothing wrong with us, then we don't need all that treatment, right? Do you remember writing that?
Yeah, I remember. Thank you so much, Hannah, and everyone who's doing this together. And when you asked me what I want to write about, I couldn't by myself pick which was the one I was supposed to write about, because as you told before, I had a lot of all these things. It was addiction, it was the eating disorder, it was depression, panic attacks, I want to commit suicide and everything. It was a lot of thoughts and emotions. So it was very difficult to just pick one little. So my story is short, but if I should tell all the things that I had been through, and when I also was staying at the treatment center, when I had my very huge wake up, I can tell it was a lot of lies. So everything it came to just packed on one thing, thought.
Yes.
And how I experience this life. So
thank you.
life isn't simple, but there is a simplicity to know that you are guided from within. But I still, like you say, we go in and out, and I really feel all my emotions, and still do, even if I have recovered from a lot of stuff. So I still feel, I'm free to feel. So
nice.
So when people say, "Oh, it's over," no, it's not over. Life is. We go in and out when we have it all emotions. So thank you for asking me to be in this together with all of you.
No, thank you. I know there's some other contributors here on the call. Does anybody else whose story's in the book? Does anybody else want to say anything? Or so we've only got a couple of minutes left. Hey, Patty. Patty said Patty's story is in the book. Hi, Patty.
Hey, how are you? I'm
Good.
going to tell you why I'm excited about this book. Okay, I have so many things I want to say, but I'm going to tell you why I'm excited about this book. Because I work for a family practice. I do the front desk, I'm the chick that answers the phone. But my boss and I, because I do 3 principles and we've been talking about this, she's actually asked me to start a new program with her called the Collaborative Care Model, where she is the physician taking care of physical health, and I will be the counselor taking care of mental well-being. What I love about your book is I can use it. I can use stories and say, look, like Heavy's on this call, and her story was so helpful for us very recently with a patient to say, look, here's the hope, here's the story, let me read it to you, let me show you what's possible. So I'm excited about this book because I think I'm going to be using it on the daily.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Patty wrote her grief story in the book, so I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And it's really amazing, and it doesn't surprise me that she wants you to to help with the clinic. That's great.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. I'm excited, so we'll see.
Yeah, thank you. And Pallavi's here. Hi, Pallavi.
Hi. So nice to see you. Congratulations to your book. It's such an amazing project. And I just wanted to say thank you for asking me to contribute with my story. It was really nice for me too to write about it and like see the whole thing again, how much change has happened. And to me, it just feels like I mean, the main thing for me was fibromyalgia and chronic pain, but there has happened so much change through understanding the 3 principles, or understanding part of what this is talking about, and it has just become part of my daily life in every issue and everything that's happening. So I'm very grateful for it, and I'm still very grateful that you found me in the Facebook group.
Yeah,
And yeah, I hope the book is spreading far and wide.
yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, so nice to see you. Thank you. So Joe, we're
Thank you.
almost, I think we're out of time almost.
Yeah, it's 12:02 here. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so I just wanted to talk about what's next because you know, like we were saying, I think this is going to be a wonderful resource for everybody. I wanted it to be like Patty was just saying, something that we can all draw on. So I've made a website to go with the book. It's called beyonddiagnosis.com, but there's a hyphen in the middle. So it's beyond-diagnosis. It's just easier to type. And I've got a page on there where people can add in more stories. So if people, you know, any of the coaches, if they want to send in, you know, case studies, or if you have clients or patients who are in the future are having, you know, great recoveries, great transformations, then they can also add in their stories. So this is going to be like an ongoing resource, you know, so we can keep adding to it. So feel free to look there. There's a page for where we can add more stories. And the other thing is I'm going to do a kind of a masterclass book study on this. I'm going to wait a couple of months because like it's so big, right? I know it's going to take everybody a few months or whatever to read through the book. And then when, you know, so in a couple of months, I want to, I'll start a book study. It'll be a 12-week class, and we'll go through each of the sections, like, you know, trauma and substance abuse and eating disorders, and we'll spend a week on each one. And maybe some of the contributors will come and share their stories, and, you know, and give some input as well. So that's what I wanted to share with people, that you know, I feel like this is just a beginning. You know, there's going to be a lot more to this.
Yeah, no, this book will keep on going and going, and it will really, I think this book could really crack things into the profession, because people are looking for evidence. They're looking for examples, because what we're doing isn't working. We have more and more diagnoses, more and more people with problems, and there is one solution. And thank you so much again, Hannah, for love. I couldn't put it down. I almost finished the book in a week. So thank you for inviting me. Sorry I was late.
No problem. Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate your time and your support. It's been invaluable. Yeah, it's so nice to hang out with you now too. Yeah, and thank you to everybody else for coming. You can put the let's see everybody now. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your support and all your contributors. From the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate your, you know, everything you've done, and your stories are amazing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you so much,
Bye.
Hannah.
Bye.
Thank you.